The jewelry box sat on my desk, its dark mahogany surface catching the afternoon light. Empty. I stared at it, my fingers tracing the edges where her initials were carved. Valerie's box, my wife's most treasured possession. I hadn't opened it in months, not since the funeral. Some things are too painful to face, but today was different. Today, I felt strong enough to look at her things again, to remember. When I lifted the lid, my stomach dropped. The velvet interior was bare except for a slight depression where her gold locket had rested for years. The necklace was gone. "No," I whispered, my voice breaking the silence of my study. "No, no, no." I checked again, lifting the velvet lining, searching every corner of the box as if the necklace might be hiding from me, playing some cruel trick. But it wasn't there. That locket had been Valerie's most precious possession, a family heirloom passed down from her grandmother. The last thing she'd asked me to protect before cancer took her from us 2 years ago. "Keep it safe for Sophia," she'd whispered from her hospital bed, her fingers squeezing mine with surprising strength. "Give it to her when she's ready to understand its value." The scent of lavender, her perfume, still clung faintly to the box, stabbing through my grief like a knife. I closed my eyes, transported back to our bedroom, watching her clasp it around her neck every morning. The familiar routine of our life together. Now, it was gone. I rushed to our bedroom, yanked open the safe hidden in the closet wall, and checked inside. Empty. The safe where I'd locked the necklace away after her death. The safe only 2 people had access to. My hand trembled as I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Sophia's Instagram. My daughter's latest posts flashed before me. Photos of her shopping for swimsuits, excited captions about her upcoming Hawaii vacation with friends, the vacation she'd been saving up for, the vacation she'd mysteriously found money for last week. I scrolled back further, looking for clues. Sophia at a coffee shop, Sophia at the gym, Sophia trying on sunglasses at some boutique. Each image of my smiling daughter now carried a question mark. A text notification appeared. Sophia. "Be home for dinner tonight, Dad. Got some exciting news about the trip." I set the phone down and returned to my study, to the empty jewelry box that sat like an accusation on my desk. The pieces were coming together in a picture I didn't want to see. Only 2 people knew the code to that safe, me and my daughter. I heard the front door slam shut, then the unmistakable sound of Sophia's boots on the hardwood floor. My daughter was home. "Dad?" Her voice echoed through the house, bright and carefree. "You wouldn't believe the deal I got on my hotel. Ocean view for half price." I closed the empty jewelry box and slid it into my desk drawer. My heart pounded as I tried to arrange my face into something that didn't show the storm brewing inside me. "In the study," I called back, my voice steadier than I felt. Sophia appeared in the doorway, her long dark hair, so like her mother's, pulled back in a messy bun. Her cheeks were flushed with excitement, eyes sparkling. At 23, she was the mirror image of Valerie when I'd first met her. "You look thoughtful," she said, dropping her bag and flopping onto the leather couch. "Working on something important?" I shook my head. "Just going through some old things." "Well, stop being so serious," she laughed, pulling out her phone. "Look at this resort. We check in next Friday." She thrust her screen toward me. A stunning Hawaiian beach view filled the display. The price at the bottom made my eyebrows raise. "That's quite expensive," I said carefully. "I thought you were struggling to save enough." Sophia waved her hand dismissively. "I sold some old stuff I didn't need anymore. Plus, I picked up extra shifts at the coffee shop." The casual way she said it made my stomach tighten. Old stuff. Like her mother's gold locket? Like the family heirloom I'd trusted her to respect? "What kind of old stuff?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. She didn't meet my eyes, suddenly very interested in her screen. "Just junk from my closet, clothes I don't wear, some old jewelry I never use." Jewelry. The word hung between us. "Did your mom ever show you her locket?" I asked, watching her closely. Sophia's shoulders tensed for just a moment, almost imperceptible. Then she shrugged. "Maybe? I don't really remember." Lie. The first clear lie between us in years. I wanted to confront her, to demand the truth, to ask how she could sell something so precious just for a vacation. But the words caught in my throat. What if I was wrong? What if I'd misplaced the necklace myself? "Anyway," she continued, too brightly, "Zoe and Kayla are picking me up later. We're doing final shopping for the trip. Need anything while I'm out?" I shook my head, forcing a smile. "I'm good." She bounced up, kissed my cheek, and swept out of the room, trailing the scent of her perfume. Nothing like her mother's lavender. I sat alone in my study, listening to her moving around upstairs, humming some pop song. The daughter I thought I knew so well suddenly felt like a stranger. I wanted to ask, but if I was wrong, I'd never get her trust back. After Sophia left, I found myself standing in our bedroom, the open safe mocking me with its emptiness. The house felt too quiet, too full of memories and unanswered questions. I ran my fingers along the inside of the safe, remembering the day Valerie and I had it installed. "For our future," she'd said, placing her grandmother's locket inside first. "For what matters most." Now I closed my eyes, and her voice came to me so clearly, it was as if she stood beside me. "Don't ever let that necklace be treated like a trinket. It carries more than gold." I could see her face as she'd said it, holding the locket in her palm, explaining its history, how her grandmother had carried it through war, how her mother had worn it on her wedding day, how one day it would belong to Sophia. A chain of women, connected by love and gold. "It's not just jewelry," she'd insisted. "It's our story." I slammed the safe shut, anger finally breaking through my shock. How could Sophia have done this? She knew what the necklace meant. She'd watched her mother wear it every day until she grew too sick. I paced the room, trying to decide what to do. Confront her? Search her room for evidence? Both options felt like violations of trust. But she'd violated that trust first, hadn't she? I found myself in front of Valerie's dresser, where her things remained untouched. I rarely opened those drawers, preserving them like a museum to her memory. But now I pulled one open, searching for a clue, anything that might help me understand. Inside was a business card I hadn't seen before. Rick's Vintage and Valuables, a pawn shop downtown. Valerie's handwriting on the back. Fair prices, trustworthy. My mind raced. Had she known this might happen? Had she somehow anticipated that one day the necklace might need to be recovered? Or was this just coincidence, a reminder of the time she'd helped her friend sell some estate jewelry after a divorce? Either way, it felt like a sign. I slipped the card into my pocket and glanced at the clock. 9:30 p.m. Too late to visit a pawn shop now. I'd have to wait until morning. That night, I lay awake, thinking of all the times I'd seen Sophia admiring that locket as a child. How she'd asked her mother about it. How she'd sometimes been allowed to wear it around the house on special occasions. Had I failed Valerie by not explaining the locket's importance clearly enough? Had I failed Sophia by keeping her mother's memories locked away instead of sharing them? By morning, My anger had hardened into determination. I needed answers. That's when I picked up the phone and made a call. Rick's Vintage and Valuables was tucked between a laundromat and a vape shop in a strip mall I'd driven past 1,000 times without noticing. The windows displayed an odd collection of guitars, watches, and what looked like antique fishing equipment. I hesitated before pushing open the door, wondering if this was a mistake. The bell jingled overhead, announcing my arrival. The man behind the counter looked up from a magazine. Mid-60s, with a gray ponytail and glasses perched on his nose. "Help you?" "Are you Rick?" I asked, approaching the glass counter. He nodded, assessing me with practiced eyes. "The one and only. Looking to buy or sell today?" "Neither, actually." I pulled out my phone and brought up an old photo of Valerie wearing her locket. "I'm trying to locate a family heirloom. Gold locket, about this size, with a small sapphire in the center." Rick's expression shifted, almost imperceptibly. He knew something. "Belonged to my late wife," I added. "Very sentimental value." He studied the photo, then me. "Lost it, did you?" "Something like that." I cleared my throat. "I called earlier. Name's Holloway. Thomas Holloway." Recognition flickered across his face. "Right. The call this morning." He leaned back, crossing his arms. "Mr. Holloway, I've been in this business 30 years. People come looking for items all the time. Husbands, wives, parents, kids. Everyone's got a story." I leaned forward. "Mine's simple. That locket was my wife's dying wish to our daughter. It's irreplaceable." Rick sighed, then nodded. "Yeah. Someone sold a gold locket like that a few days ago." My heart stuttered. "Can you tell me who?" He shook his head. "You know I can't do that." "Please," I pressed. "Was it a young woman? Early 20s? Dark hair?" Rick looked uncomfortable. "Look, all I can tell you is the seller signed the receipt as S. Holloway." He paused. "That means something to you?" "S. Holloway. Sophia Holloway." Confirmation hit me like a physical blow. Until that moment, there had been a sliver of doubt, a possibility of mistake. Now there was only the cold reality of betrayal. "Do you still have it?" I asked, hope rising. "I'll buy it back, whatever the price." Rick shook his head slowly, genuine regret in his eyes. "She didn't pawn it, sir. She sold it. And it's gone." I gripped the edge of the counter, steadying myself. Gone. The locket was gone. "When?" I managed to ask. 4 days ago, Rick replied, reaching for a ledger beneath the register. He flipped it open, running his finger down a list of entries. "Sold it same day she brought it in. That's unusual for specialty pieces, but I had a collector looking for Victorian lockets. The sapphire made it especially valuable." I stared at the entry. Gold locket, sapphire inlay, $2,100. $2,000 for 3 generations of memories. For Valerie's legacy. The price of a Hawaiian vacation. "Who bought it?" I asked. "Maybe I could." Rick shook his head. "Private collector. Confidentiality agreement. I couldn't tell you even if I wanted to." I ran a hand through my hair, fighting back a wave of despair. This couldn't be happening. Rick studied me, then sighed heavily. "Look, there is one thing." He disappeared into a back room, leaving me alone with the ticking of dozens of watches behind the counter. When he returned, he held a small piece of paper, folded and worn at the edges. "There was a note inside the locket," he said, holding it out to me. "I found it when I was cleaning before the sale. Didn't seem right to sell someone's personal message, so I kept it aside." My hand trembled as I reached for it. "You recognize that handwriting?" Rick asked. I nodded, unable to speak. The delicate loops and curves belonged to Valerie. Her final message, hidden where she thought it would be safe. "Thank you," I whispered. Rick nodded awkwardly. For what it's worth, if I'd known the story, I might not have bought it. But the young lady seemed in a hurry. Said it was just taking up space in her jewelry box. The casual dismissal of something so precious stung like salt in an open wound. As I turned to leave, Rick called after me. "Sometimes things find their way back, Mr. Holloway. Keep checking in." I nodded, but hope felt hollow. The locket was gone, sold to a stranger who couldn't possibly understand its value. I slipped the folded note into my pocket, not ready to read it yet. Whatever message Valerie had hidden there, I couldn't bear to discover it standing in a pawn shop with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. I drove home in silence, that little folded ghost burning in my pocket. The house was still empty when I returned. Sophia wouldn't be back until later. I was glad for the solitude as I settled at the kitchen table, Valerie's note before me. I stared at it, afraid of what it might contain. What final words had she hidden in that locket? What message had Sophia sold without ever knowing it existed? With careful fingers, I unfolded the yellowed paper. The creases were deep, suggesting it had been folded and refolded many times before being placed in the locket. "My darling Sophia," it began in Valerie's elegant handwriting. My throat tightened. I could hear her voice in each written word. "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and your father has decided you're ready for this locket and the responsibility it carries. This necklace has witnessed 3 generations of our family's joys and sorrows. Now it's yours to guard and someday pass on." I took a shuddering breath, imagining how differently this might have gone if Sophia had discovered the note herself, as Valerie had intended. But the locket holds more than memories. Inside the clasp is a micro key to a safety deposit box at Oak Ridge Bank. Your grandmother set it up years ago, adding to it gradually. I've continued the tradition. "A key?" I flipped the note over, reading frantically. "The contents are meant for you, but only when you understand that value isn't measured in dollars. Your father will know when that time comes." I leaned back, stunned. There had been a key hidden in the locket. A key to something Valerie had been saving for our daughter. And now it was gone, sold to a stranger along with the necklace that contained it. I reread the note, searching for clues. Oak Ridge Bank, a safety deposit box I'd known nothing about. A secret Valerie had kept, planning for a future she wouldn't live to see. The betrayal I felt toward Sophia now doubled with the realization of what she'd truly done. She sold more than a necklace. She sold her mother's final gift. Oak Ridge Bank stood downtown, a stately brick building that had weathered 3 decades of modernization around it. I'd passed it countless times, but never had reason to enter. Until today. The following morning, I waited outside until it opened at 9 a.m. sharp. Sophia had come home late last night, buzzing about her shopping trip. I'd pretended to be asleep, not trusting myself to face her. Inside, the bank was all polished wood and hushed conversations. I approached the customer service desk, note in hand. "I need to speak with someone about a safety deposit box," I explained to the young man behind the counter. "Certainly, sir. Do you have the box number and key?" I hesitated. "No, it's complicated. Is there a manager I could speak with?" 10 minutes later, I sat across from Ms. Donovan, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who listened carefully to my situation. "My wife, Valerie Holloway, passed away 2 years ago. I just discovered she maintained a safety deposit box here." I showed her the note. The key was hidden in a family locket that's been lost. Ms. Donovan studied the note. "I see. And you're seeking access to this box?" I nodded. I understand there will be procedures. Verification. Indeed. She tapped her keyboard. Holloway. Yes, here it is. Box 317. Your wife's name is the primary, with a secondary authorization. She looked up. Thomas Holloway. That's you? Relief washed over me. Yes, I had no idea she'd listed me. Mrs. Holloway updated the account shortly before her passing. Ms. Donovan's expression softened. She made arrangements for access without the key, provided proper identification. After verifying my identity and signing several forms, I found myself in a small private room with a metal box before me. Ms. Donovan had used her master key to retrieve it. Take your time, she said, closing the door behind her. I stared at the box, another piece of Valerie I hadn't known existed. Another secret kept during those final painful months when we'd both been protecting each other from additional pain. Inside, I found a sealed envelope with Sophia's name, a USB drive, and a small folder of legal documents. The folder contained account statements from an investment fund, one I'd never seen before. The balance, just over $50,000. I opened the envelope addressed to Sophia, needing to understand. My dearest daughter, Valerie had written, this fund began with your grandmother and grew with me. It represents our belief in you and your future. It's meant for education, a home or a dream worth pursuing, not for fleeting pleasures, but lasting foundations. Your father will release it when he sees you're ready to build something meaningful with it. The USB drive contained photos, Valerie, her mother, her grandmother, all wearing the locket. A visual history of the women in our family. The legacy Sophia had sold. I closed the box, a strange calm settling over me. My wife had trusted me to guard not just a necklace, but a future. And I'd failed. I returned home with the envelope and a copy of the account statements, leaving the rest secured at the bank. The house was empty again. Sophia had left a note about final vacation shopping with friends. In my study, I sat with the documents spread before me, trying to process everything. $50,000. A sum that could change Sophia's life if used wisely. Money for graduate school. A down payment on a home. Starting a business. The kinds of lasting investments Valerie had specified. Instead, Sophia had unknowingly traded her future for a week in Hawaii, selling the key to her mother's gift for a fraction of its worth. I stared at her photo on my desk. Sophia at her college graduation last year, beaming between me and her best friend Kayla. Pride had overwhelmed me that day. My beautiful, intelligent daughter. Valerie would have been so proud too. Now I looked at that same photo with different eyes. Had I spoiled her after Valerie died? Had my grief blinded me to growing selfishness? Or was this just one terrible mistake? The act of a young woman who didn't understand what she was throwing away? I remembered Sophia as a little girl, twirling in Valerie's jewelry, the locket spinning around her small neck while she giggled. I'm like Mommy, she'd declared, her eyes shining with the simple joy of imitation. That memory, once sweet, now felt like a cruel mockery. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. Found the cutest beach dress. Can't wait for you to see vacation pics. Love you, hearts. The casual happiness of it made my anger rise again. While she shopped for sundresses, I was picking up the pieces of her mother's shattered plans. Yet beneath the anger was something else, concern. This wasn't the daughter we'd raised. Valerie and I had taught her about value, about respect for family history. We'd shown her that material things mattered less than the stories behind them. Or so I'd thought. I needed to confront her, but not in blind rage. This conversation would shape our relationship going forward. It needed to be handled with care, with the same thoughtful approach Valerie would have taken. I began making notes, planning what to say. Not accusations, but questions. Not punishment, but consequences. A path forward that honored Valerie's intentions while helping Sophia understand the magnitude of her actions. This wasn't just about money. It was about who we'd both become in the years since Valerie's death. 5 days later, Sophia returned from Hawaii. Her skin was sun-kissed, her smile radiant as she burst through the front door dragging an overstuffed suitcase. "Dad, the trip was amazing!" She dropped her bags and rushed to hug me. "You have to see the pictures. The sunsets were unbelievable." I returned her embrace stiffly, the envelope from the bank sitting heavily in my desk drawer upstairs. I'd spent the week planning this conversation, running through scenarios, trying to find the right words. "Sounds great," I managed. "Must have been worth every penny." If she noticed the edge in my voice, she didn't show it. "Absolutely. Best money I've ever spent." We went snorkeling, hiked to this incredible waterfall, ate at this restaurant right on the beach. I let her talk, watching her animated expressions, her hands gesturing wildly as she described paradise. All purchased with her mother's necklace. "I brought you something," she said, digging through her carry-on. She pulled out a small wooden turtle. "It's hand-carved. The guy said turtles symbolize long life and wisdom." The irony wasn't lost on me. I placed the turtle on the coffee table. "We need to talk, Sophia." Something in my tone finally registered. Her smile faltered. "What's wrong? Did something happen while I was gone?" "You could say that." I gestured to the couch. "Sit down, please." She sank onto the cushions, suddenly looking younger, uncertain. "Dad, you're scaring me." I took a deep breath, centering myself. "I have a question, and I need you to be honest with me." I met her eyes directly. "We need to talk about your mother's necklace." The color drained from her face. Her eyes darted away, then back, a trapped animal seeking escape. "What necklace?" she tried, but her voice cracked on the lie. "The gold locket with the sapphire. The one that was in the safe." I kept my voice even. "The one you sold at Rick's Vintage and Valuables 4 days before your trip." Sophia's face crumpled. "How did you—" "I went there. Rick confirmed it." I leaned forward. "He also gave me the note that was inside. The note from your mother that you never bothered to find." "Note?" Her confusion seemed genuine. "What note?" "A letter, and instructions about a key hidden in the locket's clasp. A key to a safety deposit box containing $50,000 your mother and grandmother saved for you." Shock replaced the guilt on her face. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "I didn't—" "There was a key? Money?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "You didn't know," I acknowledged, "because you never looked. You just saw something valuable you could sell for a vacation." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I didn't know," she whispered again. "I swear I didn't know." We sat in heavy silence, the only sound Sophia's quiet sobs. I didn't comfort her. Not yet. She needed to feel this fully. "The necklace was more than jewelry," I finally said. "It was the one thing your mother asked me to protect for you. Her most treasured possession." Sophia wiped her tears, leaving streaks of mascara across her cheeks. I thought it was just sitting in the safe. I didn't think anyone would miss it." "You didn't think," I agreed, the words sharper than intended. "But ignorance doesn't erase the choice you made." She flinched as if I'd slapped her. "I'm sorry. Dad, I'm so sorry." "I'm not the one you need to apologize to." Fresh tears welled in her eyes. Understanding dawned on her face. The true weight of what she'd done. "What was in the letter?" she asked softly. I considered showing her, then decided against it. "Your mother's hopes for you. Her belief that you'd use what she left behind to build something meaningful. Not for a vacation that's already over." Sophia's shoulders slumped. The sparkle of Hawaii faded from her eyes, replaced by the dull recognition of consequences. "The money," she began hesitantly. "Is it gone?" "No, it's still at the bank. But you've lost access to it." I held her gaze steadily. "At least for now. Can we get the necklace back? I could return everything I bought. I could—" "It's gone, Sophia. Sold to a private collector. The key with it." She buried her face in her hands, her body shaking with sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep and primal. Not the performative tears of a child caught misbehaving, but the raw grief of someone seeing themselves clearly for the first time, and hating the reflection. I watched her cry, my own anger giving way to something more complex. This was my daughter, Valerie's daughter. Flawed, yes. Thoughtless, certainly, but not malicious. "I ruined everything," she whispered through her fingers. "Not everything," I said, my tone softening slightly. "But you've broken something precious. Trust, your mother's plans, my faith in your judgment." She looked up at me, her face ravaged by tears and realization. "What do I do now? How do I fix this?" The question hung between us. There was no easy answer. No quick path to redemption. "Sometimes running from grief costs more than staying with it," I said quietly. The days after our confrontation unfolded in a strange new rhythm. Sophia moved through the house like a ghost, subdued and withdrawn. The excited chatter about Hawaii died on her lips whenever I entered a room. I wasn't trying to punish her with silence. I simply didn't know what more to say. The wound was still too fresh, the betrayal too raw. Sophia tried, in small ways. Coffee waiting for me in the morning. Dinner prepared when I came home from work. Little offerings that couldn't possibly balance the scales, but showed she was trying to atone. One evening, I found her in my study, standing before the family photos on the wall. Her fingers hovered near a picture of Valerie wearing the locket. "I remember when this was taken," she said without turning around. "Mom's birthday, the botanical garden." 3 months before her diagnosis, I added, stepping into the room. Sophia nodded, still staring at the photo. She was wearing the necklace. She wore it nearly every day. I never really looked at it closely. Her voice caught. "I just saw something valuable in the safe that nobody was using." The admission hung in the air between us. "After Mom died," she continued hesitantly, "I packed away all her things in my head, too. It hurt too much to remember. Maybe that's why." She trailed off, unable to finish. I understood what she couldn't say. She'd treated the necklace as just another thing because acknowledging its significance meant confronting the grief she'd been avoiding. "I do the same sometimes," I admitted. "It's easier to look away than to remember." She finally turned to face me, eyes red-rimmed but dry. "I've been thinking about what you said, about the money Mom saved." She took a deep breath. "I want to earn it back, all of it. I want to prove I can be the person she thought I was." The determination in her voice reminded me so much of Valerie that my chest ached. "It will take time," I warned. "I know." She straightened her shoulders. "I already called the resort. They're refunding part of my stay, and I'm returning most of what I bought." It was a small step, but it was something. A beginning. Later that night, I sat alone in the kitchen, turning these developments over in my mind. The house felt different. Not healed, but perhaps beginning to mend. The silence had changed from accusatory to reflective. Beneath Sophia's shame, I sensed something awakening, not just remorse, but a desire to grow beyond this mistake. Still, the locket was gone, and with it, the key, until the phone rang again. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing contracts at work. An unfamiliar number, but something made me answer instead of letting it go to voicemail. Mr. Holloway? Thomas Holloway? The voice was instantly recognizable. Rick, I said, sitting up straighter. From the pawn shop. Yeah, listen. His voice trembled with an excitement I couldn't immediately place. You're not gonna believe this, Mr. Holloway, but a guy came in today with that same necklace. My heart stuttered. What? The locket. Your wife's locket. It's back in my shop. I gripped the phone tighter, afraid I'd misheard. How is that possible? You said it was sold to a private collector. It was, Rick confirmed, but apparently the collector's wife didn't like it. Too Victorian for her taste. So he's been trying to sell it back to various shops. Rick chuckled. Lucky for you, he walked into mine. You're absolutely certain it's the same piece? Gold with a sapphire center? No doubt about it. I recognized it immediately. Even has the same tiny scratch on the back that I noted in my ledger. There was a pause. I haven't bought it back yet. Told him I needed to authenticate it first, but he's waiting on my call. Hope surged through me, quickly followed by caution. What's he asking for it? $6,000. I winced, nearly triple what Sophia had received. That's steep. It's highway robbery, Rick agreed, but it's your wife's locket. Thought you should know before I turn him down. $6,000 was a significant amount. Money that could go toward Sophia's education, a down payment, all the things Valerie had intended the $50,000 for. But without the locket, that larger sum remained locked away. And more importantly, a piece of our family history would be lost forever. Buy it, I said, decision made. I'll pay whatever he's asking. You sure? I could try to negotiate him down. No, I said firmly. I don't want to risk losing it again. Just secure it. Will do. Can you come by this afternoon? I'll be there in an hour. I hung up, a mix of disbelief and relief washing over me. Against all odds, the locket was coming home. I grabbed my keys, pausing only long enough to send Sophia a brief text. Something's come up. Important news later. As I drove to Rick's shop, my mind raced with possibilities. Would the key still be hidden in the clasp? Would this unexpected second chance help Sophia understand the true value of what she'd nearly lost forever? When I saw it under the glass display case, I swear, time stopped. The locket lay on black velvet beneath Rick's display case, the afternoon sun catching the gold and making it gleam. The small sapphire at its center seemed to pulse with its own inner light. That's it, I whispered, leaning closer to the glass. That's Valerie's locket. Rick nodded, unlocking the case. Authenticated it myself. Even the wear pattern on the chain matches. He lifted it carefully and placed it in my palm. The weight of it was so familiar, so right. I turned it over, finding the tiny scratched initial V that Valerie's mother had engraved decades ago. This wasn't just similar. It was the exact piece that had been passed through generations of her family. The man who brought it in, did he know its history? I asked. Rick shook his head. Just knew it was vintage and valuable. Said his wife thought it looked too antique for her style. He snorted. Some people don't appreciate craftsmanship. I carefully tried to open the locket. The tiny hinge was stiff, requiring gentle pressure. "Careful with that," Rick warned. "Those old hinges can be finicky." Inside were the two empty frames where photos would normally sit. No pictures, but I hadn't expected any. What I was looking for was much smaller. With trembling fingers, I examined the inner edge of the locket, where the clasp mechanism connected. There, a tiny glint of metal that wasn't part of the locket's original construction. A micro-key, precisely as Valerie's letter had described, ingeniously integrated into the clasp. Relief crashed over me in a wave so powerful I had to steady myself against the counter. "You all right?" Rick asked, concerned. I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. "It's all here," I finally managed. "Everything." "So, about the price," Rick began carefully. "The seller's asking $6,000, but I talked him down to $5,500. He looked uncomfortable. "That's still highway robbery compared to what I paid your daughter, but—" "I'll pay it," I said, closing the locket and clutching it tight. "Every penny." Rick raised his eyebrows. "I can try to negotiate." "No." I pulled out my credit card. "Some things are worth whatever they cost." As Rick processed the payment, he kept glancing at me. "You know, most people would have been furious about the markup, would have accused me of being in on some scam." I shook my head. "This isn't about money." "Must be some locket," he said, sliding the receipt across the counter. "It's not just a locket," I replied, securing it in my pocket. "It's a key to something much more valuable." Rick's eyebrows rose, but he didn't ask for details. Instead, he handed me a small velvet box. "For safekeeping. No charge." I thanked him and turned to leave. "Mr. Holloway," Rick called after me, "tell your daughter to be more careful with family treasures next time. They don't make 'em like that anymore." I nodded. The weight of the locket in my pocket already feeling like it was pulling my world back into proper alignment. This time, I wasn't locking it away. I was locking in a promise. I didn't tell Sophia immediately. Instead, I visited Oak Ridge Bank first, using the newly recovered key to access the safety deposit box once more. Everything was as I'd left it. The account documents, the USB drive with family photos, and Valerie's letter to our daughter. This time, I took everything. At home, I placed the locket in its original jewelry box, leaving it on the dining room table alongside the envelope of bank documents. Then I waited. Sophia arrived home from her shift at the coffee shop at 6:30, her work uniform rumpled, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She'd taken a barista job the week after our confrontation, her first step toward making amends. "Dad," she called, dropping her bag by the door. "You said you had news?" "In the dining room," I answered. She appeared in the doorway, then froze when she saw the jewelry box. Her eyes widened in disbelief. "Is that—" "Yes," I confirmed. "Your mother's locket." Her hands flew to her mouth. "How?" "The collector tried to resell it. By some miracle, he took it back to Rick's shop." Tears spilled down her cheeks as she approached the table, reaching toward the box, but stopping just short of touching it. "Can I?" she whispered. I nodded. "It's our family's legacy. It belongs in your hands, eventually." Her eyes snapped to mine at that last word. "Eventually?" "Sit down, Sophia. We need to talk about your future." She sank into a chair, eyes still fixed on the jewelry box. "I had to pay triple what you sold it for to get it back," I said, without accusation. "But that's not the point." I opened the envelope, spreading the bank statements before her. "This is what the key in that locket unlocks. $50,000 that your mother and grandmother saved for you." Sophia stared at the numbers, her breathing shallow. "This money isn't a gift," I continued. "It's an investment in the woman they believed you could become. A woman who understands the difference between price and value." I met her eyes directly. "I'm giving you a choice, a path to redemption." Her chin trembled, but she held my gaze. "What kind of path?" "You'll rebuild what you lost, dollar by dollar," I said firmly. "You'll work, save, and replace every cent it cost to recover this locket. Then, and only then, the account will be yours." "That could take years," she whispered. "Yes," I agreed. "Building something worthwhile usually does." She looked down at her hands, then back at the locket. Slowly, understanding dawned on her face. This wasn't punishment. It was a second chance. A way to prove, to herself more than to me, that she was worthy of her mother's faith. "I'll do it," she said, straightening her shoulders. "Whatever it takes." I nodded, feeling the first real sense of peace I'd had in weeks. Redemption, I learned, has a payment plan. Autumn faded into winter, and winter melted into spring. Sophia kept her promise, working steadily at the coffee shop while applying for better-paying positions. 3 months after our agreement, she landed a part-time job at the West Side Art Studio, the same place where Valerie had once taught weekend classes before her illness. "It feels right," Sophia told me after her first day. "Like Mom somehow guided me there." The studio owner had remembered Valerie. "You have her eyes," she'd told Sophia, "and hopefully her talent for working with children." Sophia started by cleaning brushes and organizing supplies. Soon she was assisting with the children's weekend classes, teaching basic techniques to 5-year-olds with more enthusiasm than skill. Her clothes often came home splattered with paint, but her smile was genuine for the first time in months. She kept a small notebook, meticulously tracking every dollar she earned and saved. The first month, $246. The second, $312. By the third month, with her new studio job, $580. Small amounts against the $5,500 I'd paid to recover the locket, but steady progress nonetheless. "It's not just about paying you back," she confessed one evening as we ate dinner. "It's about proving to myself that I can stick with something difficult." I noticed other changes too. Her Instagram posts about shopping and beach vacations disappeared, replaced by photos of children's artwork and sunset views from the park, where she now jogged instead of paying for a gym membership. Most significantly, she began painting again, something she'd abandoned after Valerie's death. Simple watercolors at first, then more complex pieces using techniques her mother had taught her years before. "I forgot how much I loved this," she said one Saturday, showing me a landscape she'd completed. How much it connected me to Mom. The sparkle of entitlement that had once defined her gradually faded into something gentler. Gratitude for small pleasures, for meaningful work, for second chances. One evening, I passed the open door of her bedroom and paused. Sophia sat cross-legged on her bed, surrounded by old photo albums. She was carefully organizing pictures of Valerie, creating a visual timeline of her mother's life. She looked up, catching me watching. "I realized I've been trying to outrun her memory," she said softly. "But she's in everything good about me." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. On her dresser, visible through the doorway, sat the jewelry box containing her mother's locket. No longer locked in a safe, but present as a daily reminder of what she was working toward. I saw her mother's spirit flicker back to life through her hands. 8 months after our agreement, I arrived home to find Sophia waiting in the living room, a small envelope clutched in her hands. She looked nervous, bouncing one knee as she sat on the edge of the couch. "Everything okay?" I asked, setting down my briefcase. She nodded, standing quickly. "I've been waiting for you to get home. I have something." Her voice held an emotion I couldn't immediately identify. Pride mixed with uncertainty. Accomplishment tinged with vulnerability. "What is it?" I hung up my coat, watching her carefully. She held out the envelope, her hand trembling slightly. "I've been saving. Extra shifts, selling some of my paintings at the studio, cutting expenses." A deep breath. "Dad, I saved $1,000. Put it toward Mom's account." The simple statement hit me with unexpected force. $1,000. Nearly 20% of the total. A significant milestone in her journey toward redemption. I took the envelope, feeling its weight, not just of money, but of sacrifice and commitment. Inside was a bank check made out to me, along with a handwritten breakdown of how she'd earned and saved each dollar. "Sophia," I began, emotion threatening to overwhelm me. "I know it's not even close to the full amount," she rushed to add. "But it's a start, right? And I'm getting better at budgeting. And Ms. Trent at the studio says I might be able to teach my own beginner class soon, which would mean more hours and—" I pulled her into a hug, stopping her nervous ramble. "I'm proud of you." She stiffened in surprise, then relaxed against me, her arms coming around my waist. "You are?" "This represents more than money," I said, pulling back to look at her. "It shows commitment, understanding, growth." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "I think about Mom every time I put money aside, about what she was trying to teach me." I nodded, remembering Valerie's letter. Not just about saving money, but about building something meaningful. About understanding true value. "There's something else," Sophia added hesitantly. "I've been thinking about going back to school. For art therapy. Working with the kids at the studio made me realize I'm good at connecting with them, helping them express themselves." The path she described was so perfectly aligned with Valerie's hopes that it took my breath away. Not a copy of her mother's life, but a continuation of her spirit in a new form. "Your mother would have loved that idea," I said softly. Sophia nodded, wiping away a tear. "I think so too." I tucked the envelope into my pocket, making a mental note to deposit it the next day. A tangible step forward on her journey. Forgiveness isn't a door. It's a bridge you build one plank at a time. Sophia read her mother's letter privately. When she emerged from her room hours later, her eyes were red but peaceful. She didn't share the contents, and I didn't ask. Some conversations between mother and daughter remain sacred, even across the divide of death. In the following weeks, Sophia made her decision about the funds. Rather than using the entire amount for her education, she divided it. Half for her art therapy degree, and half invested for the future, continuing the tradition her grandmother had started. "Mom wanted me to build something lasting," she explained. "Education is part of that, but so is continuing what she and Grandma began." I couldn't have been prouder of her reasoning. It showed a maturity and foresight that reflected exactly what Valerie had hoped to instill. The locket found a new place in Sophia's life. Not locked away in a safe, but worn on special occasions. Gallery openings at the studio, her first day of graduate classes, quiet dinners when we commemorated Valerie's birthday. One evening, as autumn painted the trees outside in fiery colors, Sophia sat at the kitchen table carefully placing photos in the locket. Valerie's image on one side, her grandmother's on the other. "I've been thinking about having children someday," she said, without looking up from her delicate work. "A daughter, maybe. Someone to pass this on to when the time is right." The casual statement held profound meaning. She was thinking of her place in the line of women who had carried this legacy, and those who would carry it forward. "Your mother would love knowing that," I said. Sophia nodded, closing the locket gently. She turned it over in her palm, examining the back where an inscription had been engraved decades ago. "Love redeems," she read aloud, tracing the words with her fingertip. "I never noticed this before." "Your great-grandmother had it engraved after surviving the war," I explained, remembering Valerie's stories. "She believed love was the only force strong enough to bring people back from their darkest places." Sophia's eyes met mine, understanding passing between us. We'd lived that truth these past months. Love, for Valerie, for each other, for the people we were becoming, had indeed redeemed us both. She fastened the locket around her neck, where it caught the evening light. "It feels different now," she said softly, wearing it, knowing its story. I understood exactly what she meant. What was once a symbol of grief had become proof of healing. A testament to the journey we'd taken together back to solid ground. "Maybe the past doesn't disappear," Sophia said thoughtfully. "It just waits for us to be ready to face it." The wisdom in her words, so like something Valerie might have said, struck me deeply. In her daughter's voice, I heard echoes of my wife, not as a ghost that haunted us, but as a light that guided us forward. 2 years after discovering the empty jewelry box in my study, I sat on the porch swing watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. Sophia's car pulled into the driveway, returning from her evening class at the university. She joined me on the swing, her presence comfortable and familiar. The locket gleamed at her throat, catching the last rays of daylight. "Professor Jenkins loved my thesis proposal," she announced, smiling. "Art therapy for children processing grief. He thinks it could be groundbreaking." "Of course it's groundbreaking," I replied. "You're building it from lived experience." She nodded, her hand automatically rising to touch the locket. The gesture had become a habit, a way of connecting with Valerie in moments of significance. "I keep thinking about how differently things might have turned out," she said quietly. "If Rick hadn't called you about the necklace, if you hadn't found Mom's note, or if you hadn't been willing to change," I added. We sat in companionable silence, the swing creaking gently beneath us. So much had transpired since that devastating discovery. Pain, confrontation, growth, and finally, healing. "Dad," Sophia said suddenly, "tell me the story again. The whole story. From the beginning." I understood what she was asking. Our journey had become a story we both needed to hear, to remember where we'd been and how far we'd come. "Well," I began, looking out at the darkening sky, "it started with an empty jewelry box, with a daughter who made a terrible mistake, and a father who almost lost his way in anger." She leaned against my shoulder, listening intently, though she knew every word of what was coming. "My daughter sold my late wife's necklace to fund her Hawaii vacation," I continued, my voice strong and clear. "But that's not where the story ends. It's where it truly begins." I told her about the pawn shop, the note, the bank, about confrontation and consequences, about slow redemption and rebuilt trust. As I spoke, the stars appeared one by one above us, silent witnesses to our narrative. "So, yes," I concluded, my arm around her shoulders, "my daughter sold my late wife's necklace to fund her Hawaii vacation. But when I got that call, I didn't just get the necklace back. I got my family back." Sophia's hand found mine, squeezing gently. "Sometimes," I said softly, "the things we lose are only waiting for us to learn how to find them again." In the quiet that followed, We both felt Valerie's presence, not as a ghost or a memory, but as the invisible thread that had pulled us back together when we seemed irreparably torn apart. The circle that had been broken was now complete again. Different, perhaps, marked by the journey it had taken, but whole in all the ways that truly mattered.